Hello and welcome back to another fantasy football video. Hope you guys are doing well. We are still in the middle of game week 19 with Fulham and Chelsea still yet to play. But I think for many of us, we'll be looking ahead to that game week 20 deadline, especially now that the Manchester United and Crystal Palace game has been rescheduled. So both of those teams now do have a double game week 20 alongside the likes of Spurs and Manchester City. There's a lot of thinking to be doing ahead of game week 20. So today we're going to be taking a look at how the team lines up, potential transfers, and also discussing kind of popular players out there and the potential moves that you can make for those players as well. If you are new around here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, really helps me out. Hit the like button if you're enjoying the content, and let's get straight on into this one. So firstly, how have I been doing so far in game week 19? It's actually been quite a good game week. I'm scoring 69 points thus far with still a Kepa captain and Andreas still to play. My rank has gone up to 850k from 1.3 million, and since the restart I've been getting steady green arrows from 1.6 million, basically half my rank down to 850k, and I'm hoping that coming into game week 20, the game week 20 can be another good one, and hopefully in the near future I can get myself into that top 100k, but that very much got to play it week by week. So you can see my defense and my bench there. I think the ones that I'm particularly happy with at the minute are Trippier and Shaw. Trippier, the highest scoring defender, and Shaw currently the defender that is on best form. So those two I'm not really going to discuss too much as I'm quite happy with them. Then you've got Cancelo, Varane and Kepa. Now the trouble with Varane is that he did get benched in that game against Bournemouth, and although he does have a double game week in game week 20, could he get benched in one of them? Could he get benched for the Crystal Palace game, which is the game that arguably out of the two you definitely want him to play? And so it would actually just turn out to be a single game week at home to Manchester City, which would not be ideal. But on the same token, if he does end up playing in both games, it could be nice to have a double game week player, as I feel like we should tend to lean towards the double game week players in general. You then have Cancelo, who's accumulated 1 point in the past 5 game weeks, so he's really not been performing well and is one on the chopping block for me. Then you have Kepa at home to Crystal Palace. Kepa looked good in the first game back, but since then he's been making a few mistakes. Could potentially get rotated when Mendy recovers from injury. They are at home though to Crystal Palace, a side that have been performing quite poor of late, so you could see them keeping a clean sheet there. And then the decision also has to be made, if you take a look at my bench, as to whether I bring White or Andreas in. I think I'd be looking at potentially bringing one of those guys in for Varane if I think that he is going to miss one of the Manchester City or Crystal Palace games. Cancelo, then, it's a decision of who do we transfer in for him. I think on my list at the minute is Doherty of Spurs and Botman of Newcastle. Botman, I feel like, is the more kind of solid option, as Newcastle have been one of the best sides defensively thus far this season, and so that's the kind of easy route to take to pick the player who will probably just take over with 6 points week in, week out, which will be quite nice. Or you go for the bit more extravagant pick of Doherty. With Spurs having the double game week, he could get a fair few points, but saying that their double game week isn't exactly ideal. Playing against Arsenal and Manchester City, you would expect them to concede against, especially with the fact that Spurs' defence hasn't been particularly good of late, so that's definitely one to mull over. But I'd say at the minute, Doherty and Botman are my two kind of main targets for Cancelo. Then in the midfield, we have De Bruyne and Rashford, both doubling. Now, De Bruyne has been quite poor since the restart. He's only picking up 6 points and not picking up any attacking returns. Now, with De Bruyne, I feel like it's a case of, you've made your bed, you've now got to lie on it. The majority of us will have brought him in because he had these double game weeks. Not only does he have a double game week in game week 21, but he also has a double game week in game week 23. And it seems as though with the fact that he got benched in the game against Chelsea, didn't play a single minute, and the fact that he's been picking up 90 minutes consistently, it's only a matter of time until De Bruyne shows his class and picks up some attacking returns. So I'm happy to keep him in for now, especially with the fact that he's got the double game week. Now with Rashford, he's got an okay little double game week there, actually at home to Manchester City. At Old Trafford, Manchester United have a decent record against them, so you never know, they could pull off a result there. And then away to Crystal Palace, a Crystal Palace side who have been struggling to keep a clean sheet, actually conceding 7 goals in their last 2 home games. It could be a little bit of a feast for Rashford. And then Almiron and Martinelli, 2 players that have been on good form so far this season. Almiron I would actually like to pick up some points for. I've actually benched him when he scored points, and he's come into my team and actually not got an attacking return so far. So it would be nice to kind of pick up on some of the points that he has been getting. And Martinelli has been a pretty consistent performer thus far this season. So what other midfielders could we potentially bring in? I do actually like the look of Heung-min Son for this game week. He's got a goal and an assist against Crystal Palace. Is seemingly starting to come back into a little bit of form. Spurs have a good record against Manchester City, beating them to 0 in both home and away fixtures last season. And then a North London derby, anything can happen with it being at home for Spurs. I could see them getting a result there, and so I think that Son actually looks decent for this game week. I think Bruno Fernandes is another one that I've got my eye on, should play consistent minutes for Manchester United over the double. And I feel like many of you may have an eye on Wilfried Zaha of Crystal Palace, even maybe an Eze or Elise. For me, those guys are a void. Crystal Palace have been on poor form lately. They also have a poor double game week, playing against Chelsea and then playing against Manchester United. After the double game week, they then play against Newcastle, one of the most on-form teams in the league, and continues to have poor fixtures after that. So I feel like you're just leading yourself into a guaranteed transfer away from one of those players. And for me, those guys are a little bit of a trap. So finally, the attack. And as you can see here, we've got Kane and Haaland. Very pleased with Kane in this game week, picking up 16 points against Crystal Palace. It was a sublime performance from him. And even though these fixtures are tough for Spurs against Arsenal and Manchester City, I back Kane to pick up some attacking returns in these games. It seems to be that the way that Spurs are set up and suited to play, they love playing on the counter-attack in behind, they love playing the low block, so I feel like actually playing against these bigger teams very much suits them, kind of shown, as I said, by the fact that they beat Manchester City in home and away fixtures last year. Now the difference between last year and this year is that Manchester City obviously didn't have Erling Haaland. Now, for me, Haaland is the simple captaincy choice this game week. His effective ownership is going to be so high that, even if he does blank in both games, if your other players do well enough, if you pick your other players well enough, then you can still go up in rank. Whereas, if you don't captain him and he does do well, you're going to be absolutely screwed. So for me, it's a simple pick for Haaland in this game week. Now, Kane is probably the one that I'm going to put my vice captain on. I am tempted by him, as I do think he could have a reasonably good game week, but I just don't see any need to really go against the effective ownership of Erling Haaland in this game week. Now, I don't really feel as though any other attackers really spring out for me. You could maybe go Martial of Manchester United, but his minutes have been limited, and so I would be wary of bringing him in. The Crystal Palace attackers don't look particularly convincing at all, and with Haaland and Kane, you hit the main kind of attacking assets that you need this week. So other attacking assets I wouldn't really be looking towards. But what transfers am I actually looking at making for this game week? I think the main transfer I'm looking at making is getting Cancelo out and actually then using that money, or using not necessarily I don't need the money, but it's that Manchester City spot that I need, and then transferring Kepa to Edison. I just feel like Edison is the most guaranteed starter out of any Manchester City defender, and the fact that he's got a double game week in 21, a double game week in 23, just by sheer fact of games, I feel like he could be one of the highest, if not the highest, scoring goalkeeper in the coming period. It also just saves you from a bit of Pep roulette, which no doubt with how quick and fast these fixtures are coming for these teams. John Stones seems to be the one that's most nailed at the minute. Is he going to play back-to-back midweek to weekend to midweek to weekend fixtures? I kind of doubt it, whereas Edison, the goalkeepers don't really do much, especially Edison in games, so there's no real need to bench him. And then the other question is, who do I get in for Cancelo? Now, I touched on that earlier. I could go for Doherty or Botman, one that I'm very much tossing up at the minute. Doherty is a very good attacking option and also gets subbed off at around 70-80 minutes, which actually for me makes him a bit of a better option because it means he's kind of banking that clean sheet once he is subbed off. But will he actually keep that clean sheet? Because Spurs' defence has not been particularly strong in recent game weeks. They kept a clean sheet against Crystal Palace, but that's probably a really bad performing Crystal Palace. So I don't really think we can take too much away from that game. Now, I did want to have a quick mention of Darwin Núñez, as I know a lot of you will own him, and so, what do you do with him? I feel like if you've got Cancelo and Darwin Núñez and 2 free transfers, the easiest thing for me is to just go from Núñez to Kane and then bring one of the options that I've just mentioned in. Now, if you fancy a little bit more of a punt, you could go Núñez to the likes of Martial. I kind of advise against that. I'd actually rather go for Mbeumo from Brentford. The fact that Tony's going to be out for a little while means that he's going to be their main man on front, probably on penalties as well. And Brentford have a really nice set of fixtures coming up, so I potentially like the look of him. Or you could just keep him. He scored a really nice goal in the FA Cup, and so I feel like Klopp will continue to play him, and you never know, he could finally start putting away the chances that he is getting, because he's getting loads and loads of big chances in games. So at some point you think he must start putting those away. So you never know, towards the end of this season Darwin Núñez could become essential. So if you want to hold on to him for now, I don't actually think it's too bad of an option. You'll just have to go through a little bit more pain of him potentially missing big chances. And so that has been a quick little look ahead to Game Week 20. Plenty of decisions still to be made. Let me know down in the comments the players that you are thinking of bringing in. I'm trying myself not to get trapped with Wilfried Zaha. I love bringing him in, but at the same time, I know that it just is a trap, and a lot of thinking for me to do between Botman and Doherty. Let me know down in the comments which one of those two you think is the better option. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. It really does help me out. Hit the like button if you enjoy the content, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya.